Are we ready? Are we ready? I think we're ready. And hopefully no one will see the thing. Is everyone gonna... no one's gonna see it. We're good. Hello, it's Sol, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, the show that is back to do patch coverage, and that's kind of it. And once again, I have purpose. Patch 9.1 is out on the PTR, free to dissect and speculate and make premature conclusions on, which is what today is going to be pretty much 100% about. The other day, I took a quick look at some of the changes and shared some initial thoughts, but now let's take a closer look and try to understand on a systems level, what is patch 9.1 bringing us? What is going to be fixed or added? What is too broken to really talk about yet? No spoilers here, so no worries. But I must warn you, this is week 1 of the PTR. This is not complete information. We're missing hella stuff, and everything is up for change over the next however many weeks or months that we're going to be waiting. But I'm feeling good over what's to come. For now though, just strap in and let's take a look together. And use the navigation bar because I think this recording is going to be long. I think it's going to be quite the long bitch. This first build leaves us an impression. Blizzard is sticking to their word so far and is not introducing some newfangled system, merely fixes and enhancements to existing ones. By that, I'm talking about Soulbinds and Renown and Legendaries and Torghast and the big 3, including a mega dungeon and a raid. I find it a little bit interesting that some fans are disappointed by this after the early look, like, wah, it's literally just a mini zone and nothing else. Where's the content, Blizz? But I think we're just hearing from different people. Like we could be hearing from the systems on top of systems people instead. Let's start with something small. The pet limit has been entirely lifted in World of Warcraft, so people who just blew charms on buying storage upgrades, well, sorry about that, but anyone who's trying to work towards that can now rest easy and spend it on buying even more pets. You can still only have at most 3 of each pet. That hasn't changed, but for you super hardcore collectors who want to have as many pet types as possible, you are now liberated. Woo-woo. I'm going to talk more on Legendaries a little bit later, but first I want to make a quick mention on Covenant-specific Legendaries. It's very weird, but it looks like instead of something practical like a new conduit, there are going to be Legendaries that enhance our Covenant abilities. I would only be okay with this if the legendary equip limit were to be raised to 2, giving players some more flexibility. Otherwise, this next round of 48 or so legendaries are going to feel either overpowered or useless. Necrolord druids represent, right? I think it's probably too late for these to be shifted over to something more malleable like conduits, because we'll all have an extra potency conduit slot, but we'll see how the next few weeks treat us. I talked about PvP gearing changes the other day, so I'm going to be brief on this one. In Season 2, PvP gear will gain a 13 item level boost whenever you're in a PvP situation, as in battlegrounds, arenas, and in war mode. That means outside of PvP situations, the item level of said piece of gear will be 6 item level below the equivalent content. That probably sounds a little confusing, so let's consider this a neck that drops from Mythic Sanctum of Domination. The equivalent to this is a duelist gladiator. So the PvP equivalent neck will have a base item level of 246, but in PvP situations, the item level will jump to 259. This makes kind of a thing, or a paradigm, where I guess the best PvP gear is in fact PvP gear. I think the long-term impact of this is very positive. It no longer pressures cross-gameplay just for the sake of obtaining gear for the thing that you actually want to do. The 6 item level difference is meaningful, but not meaningful enough to make PvP gear totally useless in PvE situations. But we're missing a few pieces of the puzzle here. We don't know if Blizzard's going to implement raid-specific bonuses on raid gear, but we have seen some special hunter-based bonuses. Ooh, we're just not sure if the effects are going to be as potent in the raid as they are outside of it, let alone in PvP. We also don't know what might be in store for the ways at which raid gear is acquired, because right now, it's pretty slow, which is largely what pushed people towards PvP for the gear during 9.0. Mythic Keystone people got some love with Valor, and we'll see if there will be updates to that system as well. I'm going to keep an eye out for significant shifts, and we'll let you know, so stay tuned. Raider.io, that is, the Raider.io score, is in some form going to be built into the World of Warcraft. This initially sounds terrible for people who are already not a fan of the system, but it's important to consider that for others, it's been an integral crutch to their enjoyment. My opinion, the people who benefit from this the most are those who run 15s and higher. It's around this stage when we go beyond just flasking and using food and consumables, and players feel more reliant on add-ons to manage the path taken, and of course how to form their parties. Reliance on these features under a Mythic 10 is kind of like wearing a suit and tie to buy groceries. No one benefits from this, not even you, and you just look silly. But again, my opinion. WoW had datamined a number of strings that Blizzard is going to use to determine your Mythic Plus score. It's similar to what Raider.io does, which is to scrape WoW Armory data for Mythic dungeon clear times and the like, but neither version of these systems track other things like if you left a group early, or count between how many dungeons that you've timed versus those that you did not, and similar metrics that I think would feel punitive. I'm totally aware that a lot of people would love to see early leavers punished. I've had my small share of those as well, but we run into this kind of design creep, and we risk end up making this convoluted system to cover every situation where, oh, let's have where everyone needs to agree to abandon a key, or someone's house caught on fire and they disconnected, or a legitimate disconnect, and so on and so forth. So far, it seems like Blizzard is not going to cover that at all, and will stick with simple metrics like highest keys and fastest times. There's a forever argument over where the invisible hand of game dev should or should not play a part, and in this case, high-end Mythic Plus social dynamics will remain in the hands of the community. Metrics like these matter at the higher band of play, and these metrics allow Blizzard to create additional achievements and rewards past Keystone Master. For example, acknowledging the highest rated team similar to arenas and gladiator stuff. The sky's the limit, whatever. But I think it's worth asking this question. Should every level of key be tracked? Should 2s and 5s and 7s? I would love your guys' thoughts on this, those of you with many dozens of hours in the Mythic Plus game, because maybe the measure of a player's skill in Keystones shouldn't start at a 2, maybe it shouldn't be tracked and scored until a 10, when all the affixes are in play. It's sort of like saying keys 2 through 9 are like the unrated Mythic Plus with more relaxed rules. For example, how would you like to be able to walk into any dungeon that you want without a keystone? You select the levels, either like 2 through 9, and just go for it. The reward at the end is always going to be the equivalent of a depleted key, and based on the Season 1 rewards, the best gear that you could get would be the equivalent to normal mode raids. This would also mean that regular Mythics, aka Mythic Zeros, would then be considered Mythic 1s, and I guess those could be repeated going forward. There are obviously holes in this idea, they're big enough that you can jump through, but that's the premise. Selectable, unrated Mythic Plus to challenge players who might not be as skilled but are eager for additional small group challenges. Late game Mythic Plus, as well as the time and the score and all that stuff, begins at 10. To avoid toxicity in unrated Mythic Plus, the system won't even calculate keys under 10s as part of the Mythic Plus score. Maybe that'll help. Of course, though, feel free to shoot down any or all of these ideas, but I would love to hear some of your suggestions too. That's going to be enough about the big three for right now. What about the rest of us? What about world content and other features that all players can easily participate in? We'll start with Renown. 40 new levels of time gating that some of you hate because it's time gating, I guess. And we don't know for sure, but if these 40 Renown levels will work the way that they did in 9.0, we'll be going through each chapter of the 9.1 campaign together, only this time with a single unified story that we can all smack talk over at the water cooler each week. Like, ooh, did you see that cinematic that was datamined a few months ago? Oh, absolutely. It was just like what the leaked broadcast text said, just without the typo. So there's a good chance that the 9.1 9.1 campaign won't get the Netflix treatment, as in binging through all of it in one go. I admit it would be pretty toxic seeing players compelled to grind Mythic pluses just for the chance at Renown for the sake of Soulbind upgrades and empowerment, which are also going to be a thing. It may seem awkward that the race to World First has been taking place with incomplete Soulbinds because of these hard locks, but on the other hand, I'm glad that they're not imprisoned by needing them too. And it'll feel weird seeing the ending cinematic on the first day of Season 2 while we still have like 5 weeks of the campaign to go. Good luck avoiding spoilers for that long. But it turns out that Blizzard has shifted their tone on how flying will be unlocked. It's going to be unlocked very early in the campaign, shortly after being introduced to the Korthia zone. Earlier interviews stated that it would be unlocked at the end of the campaign, which we would estimate to be roughly 6 weeks long. But since the campaign seems to largely take place in the Maw, why continue to hold back flight? Makes sense. Whatever the case though, since I mentioned it a while back, I'm going to take all the credit. You're welcome. And let's move on. One of the more interesting things coming out of Renown though, 2 upgrades to the amount of Anima that you get from world quests. One upgrade will come in like the first week or so at Renown 42. The other will come towards the end of the Covenant campaign at Renown 58. So how does this translate? Let's take for example the lowly world quest that right now only awards 35 Anima. Assuming that the Anima upgrade provides an additional 35 Anima token with each upgrade, the least amount of Anima that you can earn from a world quest will be bumped up to 70 as early as that first week of 9.1, and then 105 by the end of the campaign. However, there are players right now that also earn bonus renown by upgrading their Covenant Sanctum, 3 upgrades in all. So for those players, by the end of the 9.1 campaign, Anima rewards from world quests will grant at minimum 210 and a maximum of 315. It makes that world boss feel pretty pitiful now, huh? This also puts Anima on a kind of escape velocity that makes buying most, if not all the things that you want from the Covenant almost inevitable. It threatens to shift the conversation from, hey Blizz, not enough Anima, fix your game, to hey Blizz, I got all this Anima and nothing to spend it on, fix your game. I think that within reason, we knew something like this was going to happen as the story progressed, and now, just like Renown, you'd have to actively avoid doing things to not to get to Anima and keep up this whole negative narrative. Okay, I'm probably exaggerating that last part, but I'm just making the point that if you listen close enough to the discourse, and here's a tip, don't ever do that, it's so depressing. There's always going to be someone mad about something. Last thing about Renown, we're getting Soulbind extensions as we gain levels. Every Soulbind is getting a bunch of things, like an additional potency conduit slot, followed by a choice between a finesse and an endurance slot. On top of that, of course, Soulbind specific traits will be there to make your choices all the harder because, you definitely love that. And now for the skinny on world content and rewards. It's mostly going to take place in the Maw and Korthia, which, no surprise, you can't fly in, but you will be able to use your regular old ground mount very early on. For reasons, the Eye of the Jailer will no longer be a thing, allowing you and your alts to farm Stygia till your face falls off for the purpose of getting upgrades for the Maw and Torghast if you haven't done so already. Those quality of life additions have almost no prerequisites, just doing the intro questing and campaign progress. From the feel of it, the Maw is a staging ground for constant assaults from the Covenants. Every few days, one part of the zone will be a staging ground for a random selection of quests with a goodie bag at the end. I didn't see much more to that, at least so far. Korthia is a separate stop, and it's easy enough to travel between Venari's Refuge and the Maw proper, and the new questing hub in Korthia. It's kind of the same deal here as the Maw, with a tavern variety of daily quest content that seems to contribute to a weekly reward. The daily quest content awards anything between Anima and catch-up gear and gold and crafting materials, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. There's a new reputation called Death's Advance, which sounds like so wholesome. The rewards there are limited right now, but of note, there is a Vault Anima tracker, which will, I guess, let you find stolen Anima vessels during Covenant assaults. These Anima vessels are more likely, Anima. There's one particular thing of interest that I found in the questing hub. There are item enhancement matrices that you can use on what are called Maw-touched gear, whatever that means, which will increase their primary stats by 20%. This I find weird. I'm used to seeing items just raise the item level. That's pretty easy to understand. I looked on Wowhead for new items and haven't seen anything obvious to indicate what is mod touched, so we're gonna have to wait and see. I have a feeling that this is more or less a progression system for players outside of the big three, you know, something to work for. It's hard to say how lucrative these rewards will be, especially when we know that World Quest rewards will also grow stronger with Renown. Next up, professions. This is going to be a quick stop. Outside of Legendaries, there are almost no new recipes to look forward to in 9.1. Now, of course, this is only the first build, so to that, I'm holding out hope. Here's what we do have though. There will be a Crafter's Mark III that, when used, will change blue crafted gear to a max item level of 180. Sadly, there are no recipes for blue weapons, and the Crafter's Mark won't work on these. There's also a prestigious Crafter's Mark, which sets the item level of a piece of gear to 200. However, it also gives the item the unique attribute, meaning that you only have one piece of Shadowlands gear at this item level, and it doesn't work on weapons. And you'll be able to surpass this gear through world quests and raid finder. Once again, first build, but normal armor and weapon crafting just doesn't seem to have much of a point. I guess this is a better route than the Covenant set because you can save Anima? I don't know. So let's talk about what we know about Legendaries so far, and this is just a guess based on what I'm seeing, and that's your warning. Don't get all worked up over what we don't know yet. It starts with this Progenian Fragment, a legendary reagent that so far seems to come from daily content in Korthia. This is not bind on pickup, meaning that everyone, not just crafters and gatherers, but everyone doing 9.1 content can equally participate in the economy of crafting legendaries. Right now, the only way a non-crafter can even sort of get in on that money is through the mission table, earning and selling materials on the auction house. Meanwhile, crafters have a new legendary recipe with an unknown source, the Vestige of Origins. It requires anywhere between 1 and 20 of these Progenian fragments, because blacksmiths require 20 while the other crafters require 1. Maybe this is for test purposes, but let's just say it's TBD. This item is an optional crafting reagent, meaning it goes into a recipe, specifically the existing legendary recipes. But what does it actually do? As you can see, I can select the Vestige of Origins if I were to try crafting a legendary base piece. I just have no idea what it'll actually do. My character happens to only know the rank 1 recipe, so will this elevate it to a rank 5 or higher? According to Wowhead data mining, there will be 2 additional ranks of legendaries, 5 and 6, and no additional soul ash is needed to reach these higher ranks. Then again, what's mega soul ash? I have no idea. We're going to explore this idea later when I talk about Torghast, but take that with a grain of salt for now. Don't write off soul ash just yet. But here's my guess. I think that crafting a legendary base piece with this reagent will open up the rank 5 recipe, skipping the other ranks. Now, yeah, it's kind of a spit in the face to people who worked their way through ranks 1 through 4 during 9.0, but this feels like the most accessible way to get people caught up. The way I see it, ranks 1 through 4 will still be useful for the sake of experimenting and having some versatility. Anyway, by using this crafting reagent, I think it'll open up the rank 5 option instantly, and then making a bunch of these rank 5s will open up the rank 6. Now let's talk Torghast and stars and skulls. It's not testable at the moment, but a number of achievements and unlocks have been data mined that are worth taking a look at. In an earlier interview, Ian Hezekiah said that they would do away with the death counter, and they would work on a sort of scoring or a rating system to determine rewards. We don't have much to work with, but let's take a look at these trackers. It looks like there's going to be 4 more layers in Torghast, meaning that overall more soul ash is capable of dropping. We all know that soul ash drops in diminishing returns, so if it's left as is, adding 4 more layers would equate to a pretty pathetic amount of ash dropping in those last 4 layers. So instead, I speculate that soul ash total rewards for the week will increase by about 50% to reflect there being, well, now there's 50% more layers, and then they would be spread around in a similar way with those diminishing returns. So if you're used to climbing 8s and you don't feel like going any higher, you'll still get more soul ash in 9.1 than you do today. I think the math works out. Now, what are stars and skulls? It might be a typo, maybe there are only stars or only skulls. One achievement has to do with an individual character while the other is account-wide, but let's assume that they're different. In gaming symbology, stars are typically indicative of achievement, or score, as I'll talk about later. Meanwhile, skulls are indicative of difficulty, meaning that there might be a difficulty slider or toggle added to Torghast on top of the layers. Hades is a roguelike game, released a little while back, where at the beginning of a climb, players can add difficulty in the form of debuffs. So if we consider the World of Warcraft, maybe this will mean taking extra damage, or disabling your Covenant ability in Soulbind, maybe decreased movement speed, stronger torment effects, no regen, limited Anima rewards, and a whole bunch of other annoying things. And for every debuff that we afflict ourselves with, it adds a skull to the difficulty. So in this situation, 4 sculling a difficulty means 4 of those debuffs, and completing this layer will unlock the next layer, all the way up to 12. This also tells me that we can potentially add a lot more skulls if it's only asking for 4. This will be the first time in recent memory where something in World of Warcraft would be so heavily menu controlled, but it could be a fun feature to experiment with. But there's also some clearly defined information on score multipliers, and kill streaks. It's getting all the fixins of a Torghast experience that needs to be raced through in order to get a high score, because usually a high score equates to better rewards. In so few words, a timed Torghast. That's the message that big creators and fan sites are trying to send, and it very much could be the case. But instead of jumping to that conclusion, let's slow walk it and see how this Torghast remix can cater to folks who just want to take it easy, and those who want to have the added challenge but don't necessarily want to race. At the moment, Soul Ash was hotfixed to no longer have a cap. It's possible that Soul Ash may no longer even have a weekly cap, and we'll just be able to farm away, knowing that the highest ranks of Legendaries are still going to be dependent on the player economy with those Progenian fragments and vestiges of whatever, and the higher ranked base prices that crafters will make. Here's another possibility. With 12 layers of difficulties, it's reasonable to think that completing a layer 12 will get you the Soul Ash cap for the week. But when you consider these stars and skulls, maybe running a layer 4 with 4 skulls and getting a 4-star score will also get you to that weekly Soul Ash cap. It can go any number of ways, but I think that while Soul Ash is still going to be the primary resource to farm for, the routine isn't going to change much at all. Like, if you just want to run 2 12s and your cap for the week, boom, that's it, you're done. The additional efforts going into Torghast are meant to deliver what's missing from it, the optional additional challenge and prestige to go along with it. Achieving a high score doesn't immediately mean speed, as these strings suggest. Actually, it only seems to offer a 100% bonus and only up to a 20% additional speed, damage, and healing bonus, which is nice, but consider the nature of Anima powers that we've experienced in Torghast so far, and this is more like icing on the cake, not a do-or-die mechanic. Adding skulls, that is, increasing the difficulty with these special modifiers, if I'm right about this, it might serve to also add a global score multiplier. So like, maybe each skull could give a flat 10 to 20% bonus to score, giving a lot of flexibility between the go mentality and the slow, thorough, but menacing challenge. And of course, at the very top will be the psychos, who will run at max everything and try to speed through it. I think it'd be cool to have a meaningless leaderboard for nothing more than bragging rights. But I'm gonna stop there. This is a lot of speculating off of very little information. There's a ton more stuff that'll be added, and by the end, for all we know, it's going to be like horrific visions all over again, which would make me jump for joy, but that's just me. That about sums up what we know and my initial impressions over the systems changes, the enhancements, and the additions coming in patch 9.1. It's not bad for the first major content patch of what we still hope to be 3, but there's still a lot more to look forward to. For one, to answer the speculation with testable content, personally, raid gear acquisition is a must-know, and bonus rolls may be coming back. It was barely worth mentioning, but there you go. I know I'm mostly looking forward to the Torghast changes, and we haven't seen anything about new Anima powers yet. And that's the show. which wasn't even much of a show. I'm just excited to share what I've seen, and if you're not, well, at least you made it to the end, so you can say that you tried. I want to give a big thanks to our lovely friends at Twitch, our valued patrons, and to Beth and Kathon for joining the family, as well as Julie, who's stepping it up. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, your concerns, and your random questions over anything that I missed, whatever you want. I hope to see you again, so be sure to subscribe to the channel, and like this video if it helped you any. See you in the next build, and until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy. Oh, it went down. Oh, it like sunk. Nice. Excellent. Do 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 do.